Morning, folks. Hi, Claire.
Just trying to work out where my background looks like now. Hold on.
It's lovely. Hi, everybody. We are recording, so if anybody doesn't want to be on screen, we can chop you out. But if otherwise, if you want to turn your camera off, if you want to keep camera on, that's fine too. I'll just give it another couple of minutes. Just saying how lovely to have so much support from criminal justice. Such a wonderful team. Yeah, that might come up as a key point today.
Yes, you're welcome to the key point.
Lovely to see you guys.
We get an insight into Sarah's shed here as well. Look.
Are you in the shed, Sarah? Wow.
We haven't worked out how to use Zoom yet in criminal justice. That's the thing you need to pick up on.
I did. Wow, that was brilliant. I was worried about Zoom, to be honest, but it's the only thing we can record on. So, right, we're coming up for past. If people jump on, then we'll click them in. But people have signed up and then they'll get the recording app. So we are recording this. So if you do want to keep your camera off, just pop it off. But if not, that's fine too. So thank you so much, Claire, for doing this today. It's a big week for Calm in a Box because we've launched the Calm Hub, which has been definitely a journey and taken a lot longer than we thought it was. So it was quite brilliant to actually get it live this week. And thank you ever so much for the people that have given me feedback so far. I really, really appreciate it because it is a big test and learn. So it's version 1.0 and as part of the Calm Hub we are running this series of Calm Leader Lives where we're going to be talking to some of the clients that we work with around the journey towards 1% calmer culture, why that's so important in terms of getting the best out of people, creating a workplace where everyone can thrive and be their best selves, and also the kind of really important role of leadership in that whole journey, in that whole process. So who could I could not start with the amazing criminal justice team at Derbyshire Constabulary, who I've had the absolute pleasure to work with for a couple of years now, and Claire, who is doing amazing things in terms of moving things forward and dealing with all of the challenges that you're dealing with. So yeah, it'd be great to get an introduction from you, Claire, a bit more about what you do and what's important to you when it comes to culture and leadership.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'm Superintendent Claire Hammond. I work for Derbyshire Police. That's my official title. I like to call myself Claire, who just works in the role of Superintendent at Derbyshire Police, which is very different to being the Superintendent. So I've worked in criminal justice, I've worked in policing for around 18 years now, and I've been a superintendent for the last 4, bizarrely. Trying to work out where I've been. So the last 4 years being superintendent. It's a difficult journey through policing to this rank, especially as a female in that. But the last 3 years have been some of the best, or certainly the best out of the 4 years in superintendent anyway, as criminal justice lead. So for me, kind of what we do in criminal justice, we manage all of the court processes. So we've probably had one of the most challenging 2 years through COVID, although policing has generally. We really got hit one of the hardest because all the courts closed. And then after that, I'm the victims lead for the force. So we manage all the victims moving forward and how do we support them through their journey through the criminal justice system. We've got staff working from home, which is just unheard of in policing. The same challenges that most people undertook really, but we had this added pressure of what do we do with all these people where we're now in a bottleneck of there is nowhere to go. And it really makes you think. So from a leadership perspective of I actually have no power. And I suppose one of the things in policing all the way through is there is a reliance upon the fact you're in the police and you have an element of power to be able to do things. And whilst I've not ever tried to rely on that, you suddenly find during COVID that's not there because everywhere's shut and no one can help you, and you are literally in this position where it's just you guys. And I remember there was myself, Sarah and Paul kind of sitting on our Teams call trying to work out this technology from home, going, what on earth do we do now? And I guess that kind of changes your whole leadership style in that realization that nothing is going to carry on the same, and it takes a minute to kind of step back and realign. But then we didn't have a minute either. So we've been through a real journey, and I guess my leadership style has changed probably massively over the last 3 years. it was different. I worked in public protection for probably 15 years, so 14 years prior to that, and public protection is a different beast altogether to criminal justice. But in a policing world, as a DC, a DS and a DI, I've kind of gone through the ranks up in that area of business, which is a really stressful area of business. But you are dealing with police officers all the time, and they take different management again to our police staff. So yeah, so there's been a real shift over the way we do things, but that's me kind of working through who I am. But when we talk about policing superintendent, I guess I was one of the younger superintendents, so I'm one of the youngest in Derbyshire. I'm not sure that makes any difference because I've got more grey hair now, having been promoted, than I had prior to being promoted, I think. But seen as a real positive, but I guess the challenge that comes being promoted as being a female in the police wasn't being able to celebrate the fact I'd been promoted, because so many of my male colleagues who didn't get promoted at that point felt aggrieved by the fact that we'd been promoted, and I was young in service, much younger than they were, and I was younger than them to begin with. So that in itself comes with its own challenges, and managing people who do have more policing experience than I've got, because they've been in 25, 30 years. And policing culture is very much based on how long a service have you got. So your leadership is not necessarily based on how good you are, but how long you've spent in the service and where you've worked. So almost your reputation of kudos of which big job have you done, and that's really how your leadership is dictated by. And I guess I've been out to change that from day one. So my first point from being years ago, I'd been a young PC who kind of bullied by my sergeant, and then realising that actually the job he was doing wasn't that great and I could do better, has probably shaped my career all the way through, to the point of if they can do that, I must be able to do a better job than that. And that is literally how I ended up where I am today, for no other point. So it's been an interesting journey through the last 18 years.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it just goes to show, doesn't it? I mean, how many different layers there are to culture and leadership, and in different contexts, all of those different kind of aspects that you're trying to sort of unpick. But I mean, you're definitely a force for change. I think, that's clear to see. And, but dealing with all of those different sort of things on lots of different levels. And this is, I think, where it can get tricky, isn't it, in terms of when you start to look at workplace culture and leadership. It's almost like, where do you start? So I think the purpose of these leader lives is to try and unpick that, and obviously the work that we do ongoing is to use the calm model to help us unpick that. So for starting off with the first dimension, which is the C of calm, so all around connection, so connecting to what's important to you, connecting to other people with that kind of aim to build that real sense of community. And this is something that has come up again and again in the work with criminal justice, is how fantastic a community you have. And I think the connections that I see between people, the relationships that I see between people, and sort of that real drive to support each other, I just think is a huge strength that you have within your culture. And is that something that, why do you think that is so important for you guys in criminal justice?
I think in policing generally, that team ethic is one of the things that gets you through on most events, the difficult events, and criminal justice is no different. Criminal justice picks up, may not respond at the scene on that 999 call, but is the one that picks up all of the gruesome horribleness afterwards and is still dealing with it, just in a slower time. And you need your colleagues there, you need your friends, you need to feel like you're not alone. So policing is good at that teamwork. What policing sometimes struggles with is that teamwork, and then embedding, I guess, the management and that leadership side into it. It's very team-based on the ground, but then you almost need to infiltrate it, I think is probably the best way to describe it. And I think criminal justice is very different for me. Criminal justice is an area that we've managed, I think, and maybe my team will tell me differently, but we work very much as one. And one of the things for me is, I might sit here as superintendent and have the head of department, but it makes no difference because I can't do it like anybody else. So our team, without being part of it and having everybody's ideas and moving forward, and it's something you learn very quickly that actually I'm not in this on my own and I can't do it on my own. And as much as I'm fed down from the chief constable how they want it to work and how I've got to feed that out. Sometimes it's that, how do I bridge what they want with what we can do and what my staff want? And I guess that's the challenge for me in bringing that teamwork together. And we've gone through rocky times, we definitely have. And there are times when, as a leader, the last thing I want to do is use that. Unfortunately, in policing, we're still that rank organisation where we've got to tell people this is the way it's going to be because the decision has got to be made. But yet to try and bring people on board with you. And I think what we've got in criminal justice is really special. We call ourselves a family now. And I think, you know, when we're bringing people on board, it's like, do you want to join our family? Because I'm no different to everybody else. I can't influence anything without anybody else doing. So I'll work as hard as everybody else does in the team, but we are one team and nobody's got a stronger voice than another. And I think it was really hard to get that through because you get the, again, through COVID, well, I can't see you and you never hear. And there's all of those battles. But, you know, Zoom and Teams were great for that, weren't they? Let's all come on. And there's still barriers for us because of rank, because people say, well, I don't want to talk to you because you're the superintendent. Whereas I guess for me, that connection and just being yourself is the key bit to making sure you get allowing everybody to be who they are without forcing them into a box of you've got to be somebody to fit into this team. We are diverse. We are just what we are. We all have our different skills and we all have our different quirks, which we all support.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's sort of moving on to the A of the CALM model, isn't it, in terms of that acceptance and awareness of self. But just go before we get into the second dimension, and that's the whole concept of support team, isn't it? And I think describing it as a family is definitely something that I can really see within your culture and how you come together as a team. So on those, it's accepting that there are good days and bad days, and that's completely normal, isn't it? It's not something to be afraid of, although it can feel very tough at the time, particularly when there's a lot of bad days in a row. As a leader, how have you gone about developing your support team for you as a leader, and then role modeling that to everybody else in terms of how important that is?
My immediate team, I couldn't manage without. They see me through the good, the bad, and the ugly, and probably more of the bad and the ugly over the last 3 years, really. We talk about everything and anything. You know, there are morning meetings where we come on to make sure we know what's going on in the world, but actually it's about building that relationship with who we are as well, and being able to feel free to, I've had a bad day, for whatever that might be. We've all got different personal circumstances. We're all in different elements of our lives, and you know, everybody supports everybody, but knowing you are able to have that friendly face, and when things get tough, just pick the phone up or as teams up and just say, we got time for a coffee, and I just want to moan. Sometimes I just need to moan and just need to get it out there about this is a bad day and actually I don't know what to do about it, and I'm not necessarily looking for an answer. I just need 10 minutes of offloading. But you talk it through and then you move on to that, what you're doing at the weekend. Oh yeah, put the Christmas tree up, and all of a sudden it's taken that stress off again. So for me, without my immediate team, who most of them are on here today, I think I couldn't do it without them, because the days when, even when they're on annual leave, or you know, we've had times where people have been off for their own circumstances, it's a very lonely place if you can't pick the phone up, and and even if you don't need to offload, just seeing a friendly face is sometimes all you need.
Yeah, and I've seen that done beautifully with the groups that I've, you know, worked with in criminal justice. You know, when people have had that difficult day, the kind of real, there's been no hesitation in people sort of saying, just come and have a chat, or I'll ring you, or just let me know. Don't go through it alone. And that is kind of taking us into that A of the CALM model, which we talk a lot around. What we've learned a lot in terms of working with the police, which has been helpful, is around that, the importance of processing what is happening to you, particularly when things aren't going so well. So when, and particularly, I guess, in the nature of the work that you guys do, and the things that you can come across. So in terms of being able to process our thoughts and emotions, and there might not be an answer and there might not be a solution, but actually a really, really important thing for us to do to be able to kind of reset and rebalance, you know, on those sort of more difficult days. Something that, you know, we're working through, isn't it? But where do you see this going in terms of police culture? You know, that ability to sort of process about how easy it is to be open about thoughts and feelings and emotions, rather than that perhaps mindset of just get on with it, just sort of suck it up. This is what it is.
Policing is a really odd culture, and in 18 years since I joined, there has been a real shift. So when I first joined, it was very much, for want of a better word, man up. Like, it's just what it is. You need to get on with it. And you know, I was a 23-year-old female joining the police in a little village where very often I was single crewed on my own in the middle of the night, stopping cars with people who were much bigger than I were. And it's that culture of get on with it, man up, because that's what you've joined for. You've got a uniform, but your uniform gives you a barrier. It definitely does. So you become this person when you put a uniform on that nothing can get me, but it can. And then you realise mentally it doesn't protect you. So your uniform might offer a barrier to those people you're stopping cars who might not want to punch you or something else, but it certainly doesn't mentally change the impact that every one of those incidents has on you. And I think years ago that was frowned upon, and I don't think it's frowned upon now. However, I don't think we're open enough about it. I think there's still a real utilisation of whether it's mental health or just having to, I can't deal with that incident right now, or whatever that might be. I still think because of the way the culture is, there's still barriers to that. So I suffered from depression probably at 5 years into my service, quite significant depression and stress, work-related stress and anxiety of just realising that you've not dealt with anything, or this massive change in life at 23 years old, where to me the world was quite a nice place at 23, and then I joined the police and realised actually the world's life is not quite as nice as I anticipated it being. And that's a big shock to the system, and something I think new recruits really struggle with as well, because you're not ready for what that world is about to throw at you. And then because you feel you haven't got that support to say, I'm struggling with this, it gets so bad that you then have no choice but you've got to deal with it, because it's flooring you, whether you like it or not. And I learned a lot from that in my own personal strive of, I'm not giving in, I don't want to take antidepressants, not that there was anything wrong with them, but that was my one last bit of sanity of, I don't want to give in to this, the job is not taking that bit away from me. So I spent a good 2 or 3 years battling to get back. And I think that bit for me, I've consistently talked about. And I would say the one thing that I learned from that very first bout is, you never get rid of it. It never goes away. But you are now more aware of it. So I'm now more aware of what creates that anxiety, what creates that stress and that depression side of it, and how I manage that. And sometimes it sneaks up on you, but I'd never experienced it before. So then to understand what triggers it, and not quite as easy just to say one thing triggers it, it is a productive period of time, but being able to recognise it in other people. So I guess for me, that's now a strength. And it's one of the things that I'm probably most proud of in my policing career, is going through that 3-year period of having stress and depression, where there were days when I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't want to put my uniform back on. The last thing I wanted to do was go back into a police station. To have overcome it, got promoted. But now when I look at my teams, realise that actually life is so much more important. Our job is really important, but you've got to be well to do it. So being able to recognise the signs of what that looks like, but actually talk freely about it. And I find the higher ranked I get, the more I can talk about it, the easier it is for other people. Because I think if I'm suffering it at this rank, those people who are new in service, who are police staff who've only been with us 3 or 4 weeks, 6 weeks, however long that might be, who are sitting there thinking, wow, I can't really cope with this, but actually everybody else seems to be doing really well around me, so I'm not saying anything. That's the danger zone. So I suppose for me, we don't talk about it enough. We need to, but we need to talk it in the right sense of, I think we badge around a lot mental health and all of those sorts of things and the culture, but it's the personal experience, I think, sometimes makes the difference. And sadly, we've been there. So
how incredibly powerful, I think, probably for everybody on this call, about hearing your story there. And I think it is all around, the A of the calm is around that awareness piece, and people being able to sort of let it out, isn't it? And we're learning a lot. It's a work in progress, and nobody knows the answers on all of those stuff, but it is about starting that conversation and keeping the conversation going. And I think what's beautiful in criminal justice team is, because of that massive strength around connection and community, you are in a good starting place to begin, to further that conversation, aren't you, around opening up about that A dimension, and not having to hold all that stuff inside that you're carrying, because we know for sure that that's not good for our long-term mental or physical health. Coming on to the L dimension, let me rest, or the one that's always a massive challenge. And L is sort of the one that's sort of most unique, I guess, to what we do at Calm in a Box and the Calm model. and in terms of culture, slowing down to go faster, it's very, very countercultural for everybody. I don't think I've come across any team that kind of goes, yeah, we've got this down. It's a whole different way of thinking, isn't it, about approaching work and life, in terms of, you know, being able to take regular breaks. And I know we've done quite a bit of focus around setting boundaries and taking breaks, which for many people is incredibly challenging. So in terms of kind of workplace culture around that, what are some of the biggest challenges? And you touched on some of them already, but for a post-pandemic police workforce, and in criminal justice, what are some of the biggest challenges around that L dimension?
So everything in our world is changing. We need, obviously, financial government structure. We need to change what we do more for less. You know, the same as every organisation does, but we're not commercial based either. So there's no kind of reward at the end of it, I suppose. And so you're being pushed to do more with less, which unfortunately the staff take on board as I need to do more, which means I can't have a break and I can't do these things, and therefore, and we get to that burnout stage, and you know, we all feel it, I guess, from our management team as well. We all feel the same. But taking that 10 minutes, I went and had tomato soup the other day in the kitchen away from my laptop, and actually ate a bowl of tomato soup, which was the first time I've done it in ages, because you feel the need to do it whilst trying to do a meeting. But then half the soup gets eaten and I'm only listening to half the meeting. So I've not really done anything productively. And now I'm hungry. And as we've worked out, when I'm hungry, that's actually worse than something to eat. So I think our challenge remains getting those people breaks. So I have the custody element of policing, and I really struggle to get our custody detention officers and our sergeants out of the custody block to get a break, because they have a hotel full of people who need their skills to look after them in that 24-hour period, and there's not enough staff to be able to say, well, that's okay, because you can come in and take you off, and you go off, because everybody will know from a commercial sector as well, I'm employing twice the amount of staff I need just to be able to facilitate breaks then, which is a really complex process. And how we get over that, we're still not over that. We're creating kind of rooms where they can go to so that they're still within the custody block but feel a bit nicer. They're all laughing at me. As you can see my own background, I'm a bit of a tree fan, and I'm a little bit obsessed by trees, plants and stuff. So I'm like, let's paint the walls with trees, let's put some plants in there. That's my calm. If you saw the plants in our office, you probably wouldn't think that, because they're all bent over because nobody's watered them properly. So it's probably not the right setting for plants. But that kind of, can we give you somewhere where you can go? And we create wellbeing rooms across the force. I went and sat in one the other day to take a phone call. I'm not sure that's the purpose of them, but actually it was quite nice to sit on a sofa and take a phone call, as opposed to being sat upright on my desk. And I guess that's that, allowing that ability to come away. And some of our team, when I do go to the office, we've got some kind of sofa areas outside, and they'll be sat having a lunch, and sometimes I just go and join them, which is probably the last thing they want when they're having a lunch, is for me to just go and sit with them. But to try and encourage that this is not an issue. And sometimes they go, oh, I've got to get back because I've only got 5 minutes till the end of my lunch. I'm like, no, just, you know, I've been sat here talking to you for 10 minutes. This isn't about, like, we're rushing back to work. I want you to be productive, but to be productive, you need to be relaxed as well and go back in. And I sometimes find at home, even just trying to go for a walk at lunchtime, you come back in and you can actually get on with stuff differently. And during COVID, I was known to go for a run in the middle of the day, just to try and get my brain clear, to try and do other things, and the kind of slow down to be more productive. I think my team will definitely say, having had spa days and then coming back with a list full of things that we could now do and we could improve things on the basis that I've just had time to sit and think. And my key point, my key point was, I've been in the shower, I've had a long shower, and guess what I thought about while I was in the shower? Because just that time where I've got a 6-year-old where I'm not getting, mummy, can I do? And then, you know, the same at work with someone else ringing you with a question. And because generally my life is to answer everybody else's questions and get their work done, which then means none of mine gets done. But that being able to slow down enables me to get to where I need to be. And that's what we're trying to envisage with all of the team. But yeah, policing is that very much, no, I just need to be working really hard for 7 or 8 hours. But not really achieving. And so working hard sometimes can be, I'm sat behind a desk with my computer on, I'm just not achieving anything. So yeah, we're trying to be the whole custody waiting queue. So we're introducing things like apps into custody so that they can see how many prisoners we've got in the queue waiting to go into custody, so they can be smarter with their time. So rather than just arresting somebody and standing in the queue, go and do something else, be smart with your time, but just slow down a bit, and that have that holistic view of things, which we tend to. It's blue light culture, isn't it? Like we put the blue lights on and we race to something, we deal with it, and then we race to something else instead of just going, as I found on miles per gallon recently, slower you drive, you only get there 2 minutes differently, but you can get 45 miles per gallon as opposed to 37.
Yeah,
So,
very true. Very true. It's one of those kind of faulty stories we tell ourselves, isn't it, about pace and productivity, and actually, is that efficient or is it effective? Again, another huge work in progress for lots of cultures. But I think, it goes without saying, having a leader, one thing that we do see is if the leader gives people permission to slow down and take breaks, that is a really, really powerful part of the jigsaw. But it's also having the compassion back the other way, isn't it? That the leaders going through the same challenges themselves, isn't it? And that it's not easy for any of us, because it's the habits of a lifetime, isn't it? And consumer culture, commercial culture, the culture of the West has not been one that has encouraged or rewarded us to kind of slow down and find balance, has it? So we're all sort of on a huge learning curve. So coming on to the final dimension, we'll start to go back into the doing side of things rather than the being. So people start to then have a bit of a sigh of relief, because we're back to a little bit of planning, which people are tend to be much more comfortable with. But the whole idea is that it's all about working on that below the waterline, sorting out the mindset and the energy first before you start to make a plan that you can actually so change can come about in a sustainable way and stick, and not feel that we're like kind of trying to chase too big a goal. So how does that kind of work well for you when, what works well for you when approaching kind of culture and people change in that way? So, and you talked a lot about sort of the different challenges around the environment and some of the small things that you're starting to shift. Is there anything else you would say that works well? Is always working well?
Yeah, we're going through a lot of change at the moment. I think CJ has been going through change probably for the entire time I've been here. I guess some of it enforced on us, and some of it actually around us improving efficiency, effectiveness, and helping the staff like do more with less, I suppose, but without them having to take on any more. And the key bit for me is you'll never be right. That's the one thing I've come up with from a cultural perspective and to change perspective. You never get it right.
Wrong. Yeah,
you can't get it right for everybody. Communication, key bit. The bit for us is and finding the right way of communicating. Emails are obviously really cold. We do team drop-ins, we do team meetings. Our team are fantastic at going out and getting to speak to the staff as well. But it's that kind of personal touch of, okay, let's have that conversation, and being available, which is the worst thing, because like we talk about, how do you take time away and how do you take a break? But I kind of sometimes have to be available all the time, because when somebody else needs that conversation, it's that showing you are available, because the minute you're not available, then you go into the box of, well, they don't really want to talk. So there is that bit of, there is a pressure around that, but being able to have that normal conversation. And do you know what? And I'll say this, and maybe it's fit to be branded about in policing, but being normal, being able to have that conversation. I'm nobody special. I'm just sitting here trying to solve a problem with a load of jigsaw pieces. And actually, what are your ideas? And responding to those ideas. So we've had some really good responses when we've done, this is the plan. We've sat down, we've absolutely bashed it out and gone, right, this is the best way of doing things. We then put it out to consultation with the staff, and they've tweaked it. And some of their ideas have been, that really will work. And we've been able to show that by going back. And I think sometimes that is respected somewhat, I guess, and that seems to get us in further with the teams when we are trying to break down those barriers of, we do want to do best for you and we are trying to do it for your possession. But I'm very honest, and I like to give it from day one, and that's not always the best thing to do, as we've established. And other people have said to me, why didn't you just lie to us for 6 months? Because I'd rather have not have known. I think, well, I'd rather tell you the truth from day one, and we tell them the reasons why we're doing something. And I think that clear communication and that clear, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. And very often, this is the problem we're trying to solve. Be really clear on what your aim is and what you're trying to achieve, because often change feels, especially in policing, change feels like change for change's sake, just because we tend to go around in a 10-year cycle with things. So being really clear on what we're trying to achieve and why, and giving it back to them. And often if you give it back to them, that does make a difference. And say we've had some great responses and we've tweaked things accordingly. So for me, that's the way of communicating and being a voice that they actually gets listened to.
Yeah, brilliant. I think we'll hook you up with Elon Musk on that one. I think I could do some help from you around that. But yeah, superpower is the inclusion, getting that conversation going, and trying things out, isn't it? It doesn't have to be a fait accompli. Some people's monkey brain goes crazy, doesn't it? And whereas it's all about testing and trying things out step by step.
We call it version 1 now. Everything is version 1 because I think there's an acceptance that we introduced it, and certainly in policing, we introduce things, don't evaluate them, and then we just let them run because it was a good idea. Whereas we're very much in criminal justice, like this is step 1. Step 1 is just getting off the floor. We're putting it onto step 1, but it's got the whole staircase to go up yet. So we're going to push it up to the next step, because every time we do something, we go, it quite didn't work how we wanted to. And police officers don't respond how you expect them to. You've got 1,500 police officers who always do the opposite of what we expect them to do. So what we do now is we start something, go, well, that didn't work. So actually, we then talk to the people who are using it and say, well, how would we tweak it this way? And sometimes there is a little bit of just stick with it for a few weeks, but sometimes there are subtle tweaks we can make in between. So by the time you get to kind of, well, it's looking quite good, you're on iteration 25 or something. So I think as long as we're really clear now, this is not going to be the end, this is the start. It's the start of a very big journey. The culture, the change that we're bringing in, the day we go live with it, it's not an ideal product, it's not a finished product, this is what roughly it needs to look like. It's rough around the edges.
It's the concept. Yeah, the power of co-creation, isn't it? Co-creation all the way within the types of culture we're currently dealing with and the complex challenges. So just to finish off, and then we might have a couple of minutes of questions if anyone's got any burning questions. Is what's one piece of advice you would give around finding 1% calmer for people that are leading teams or driving workplace culture change?
My biggest piece of advice is about being yourself. The one thing I found all the way through this, if you try and be someone you're not, and you try and adhere to the principles that everybody else wants you to be as a leader, you fail really quickly. Whereas if you stick to being who you are, you're grounded with your feet on your ground and don't change from, everything changes us and our experience changes us. But keeping your feet on the ground and remembering the person you were the day you walked into work and remembering all those feelings you had makes you one of the better leaders on the basis that you can empathise with everybody else. And so being yourself and not changing your excitement and desire for not just for change, but for innovative creations, off the wall ideas, just be yourself and just run with it. But being yourself and being human makes all the difference to the people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Authenticity, isn't it? And yeah, I couldn't really ask for a better, more authentic person to do the first Calm Leader Live. So
thanks, Sarah.
Anyone got any questions? If you want to pop them in the chat or shout them out. We've got a couple of minutes left before we get cut off by Zoom.
And just for everybody's knowledge, I'm not wearing pyjamas. Apparently they do look like pyjamas, but it is actually a shirt. It's a Jack Wills shirt as well. It's a really expensive one, which apparently looks like pyjamas. The things you have to think about when you come on a Zoom call now.
All the layers, isn't it?
Yeah, it was that or uniform, and uniform's a little bit overpowering. So, and I'd have to iron that as well. So I decided not to. Laziness in me.
Well, I think people are either pondering a question, but yeah, feel free to follow up with me after if you had a burning question that you perhaps think about when you go off and reflect. We'll send you a copy of the recording. A huge thank you to Claire. You've been absolutely brilliant this morning. I think it's definitely been food for thought for all of us. Great to see the criminal justice and the criminal justice team. Lovely to see you as always. And the next Calm Hub session will be a Christmas slowdown. So if you're looking for 30 minutes just to have a reset, just some time out and chill out in the run up to the big day, I'll send you the link in the follow-up. So it'd be great to see you there. And as always, please give me the feedback. So don't hesitate, let me know what worked, what didn't work. Nothing to do with Claire, I'm sure, but in terms of setup. And
feel free to give me feedback as well, always learning.
Growth mindset all the way. Have a great Wednesday, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.